Good morning, everyone. It's good to be with you. Thanks for joining me as we walk through First Corinthians. Yes, we are back in First Corinthians. We took a couple weeks off. Kind of thought, with everything that's going on with elections and with just general Christian culture, we would take the 2 weeks off. We're back in First Corinthians. We're in chapter 7. We're going to be doing verses 25 through 40. It's a very long section, so we're going to try to move very quickly through it. However, I think it's okay to handle this as a whole because this seems to be the capstone to Paul's discussion from earlier in the chapter where he was dealing with the married, the unmarried, and his basic gist was remain as you are so you can serve the Lord. And so we're going to keep going through this passage. We will finish chapter 7 today, and then next week we will be looking at food sacrificed to idols. It's one of my personal favorite sections of Corinthians, so I'm excited to get there. But in the meanwhile, we're going to start in verse 25. I did forget my glasses today, so bear with me as we read through. We'll read the entire passage, and then we're going to quickly skip through verses 25 through 40. We won't go as slow as normal. So verse 25. Now about virgins, I have no command from the Lord, but I do give an opinion as one who, by the Lord's mercy, is faithful. Because of the present distress, I think it is good for a man to remain as he is. Are you bound to a wife? Do not seek to be released. Are you released from a wife? Do not seek a wife. However, if you do get married, you have not sinned, and if a virgin marries, she has not sinned. But such people will have trouble in this life, and I am trying to spare you. We'll talk about that. It seems like a harsh verse, but when you understand what Paul's saying in context, it's not quite as harsh as it seems. Verse 29. This is what I mean, brothers and sisters. The time is limited. So from now on, those of you who have wives should be as though they had none, and those who weep should be as though they did not weep, and those who rejoice as though they did not rejoice, those who buy as though they didn't own anything, and those who use the world as though they did not make full use of it. For this world in its current form is passing away. I want you to be without concerns. The unmarried man is concerned about the things of the world, how he may please the Lord. But the married man is concerned about the things of this world, how he may please his wife, and his interests are divided. The unmarried woman or virgin is concerned about the things of the Lord, so that she may be holy both in body and spirit. But the married woman is concerned about the things of this world, how she may please her husband. I am saying this for your own benefit, not to put a restraint on you, but to promote what is proper, and so that you may be devoted to the Lord without distraction. If any man thinks he is acting improperly towards a virgin he is engaged to, if she is getting beyond her usual age of marriage, and he feels he should marry, he can do what he wants. He is not sinning. They can get married. But he who stands firm in his heart, who is under no compulsion, but has control over his own will, and has decided in his heart to keep her as his fiancée, will do well. So then, he who marries his fiancée does well, and he who does not marry will do better. We'll talk about that as well. A wife is bound as long as her husband is living. But if her husband dies, she is free to marry to anyone, or she is free to be married to anyone she wants, only in the Lord. But she is happier if she remains as she is, in my opinion. I think that I also have the Spirit of God. This is a long passage, so we're going to very quickly hop through. I'm sure that this will be I know that it's going to be a quicker pace than I would like to go, but the main gist of what Paul has here, I believe, is caught up here in verse 31. For this world in its current form is passing away. I think this section with 29 through 31 is really important to reading what Paul is trying to say. Because what Paul is actually saying, he is not pronouncing a judgment against marriage. It's very obvious Paul is very pro-marriage as you read the entire span of his letters, if you read, even in this section, you can see that he values marriage, but he's coming at this through the lens of this world in its current form is passing away. And as we see in several other places, his primary concern is that we would serve the Lord unhindered. Serve the Lord unhindered, which I think is a concept that we can take even outside of the context of marriage and this discussion and look at our greater life and say, are we serving the Lord unhindered? So this first bit here, 25 through 28, what he's doing is he's saying, look, I think you should, because of the present distress, right? I think it's good for a man to remain as he is. Don't change anything about what you're doing. In Corinth, they had a couple of extremes. They had the extreme of, well, now that I'm married, I should pursue extreme celibacy. And the married people were doing the same thing. They were either divorcing their wives or they were separating or they were doing whatever. And Paul is saying, no. That's not the point. There were also those who were saying, well, I must be married in order to be a fulfilled Christian. And that's not the point either. What Paul is pointing to is remain as he is, because back down in verse 31, the present world is fading away and we are to serve the Lord. So do whatever means you will be able to best serve the Lord. Should you get married? Yes, get married then. If you should be single, stay single. Either way, though, find yourself content in where you are. He keeps going here. Are you bound by a wife? Don't seek to be released. Are you released from a wife? Don't seek a wife. Stay as you are. However, and then he seems to be talking back to the single crowd. If you do get married, you haven't sinned. There we see, okay, Paul's not anti-marriage. What he's trying to make the point of is, where is your focus? Where is your focus? Is your focus on the fact this world is fading away and we have a task and a mission? Focus on that. He has this 28. We'll just briefly look at this. Such people, so those who get married, such people will have trouble in this life, and I'm trying to spare you. What Paul's referring to there is not an indictment against marriage. What he seems to be talking about is, we saw in several places, there was interests are divided. Down in 35, we have without distraction. Later on, just right up here, we have pleasing your wife, pleasing your husband, being distracted, having to have two minds. What Paul's trying to do is further emphasize, I want you to focus on serving the Lord. And it is true that when you are married, you now have another person to keep in mind, to keep track of. And if you are married, you must keep them in mind as you serve the Lord. So everything for Paul is coming back under this umbrella of, without distraction, focus your eyes, focus your mind on the task at hand, because the world is fading away. So married people, don't do harm to your marriage by ignoring your spouse. And don't do harm to the kingdom by blaming your spouse for anything. Instead, you and your spouse set your eye on the Lord. If you're married to somebody who's not a believer, I want to encourage you that, as Peter says, that you pursue your spouse, that they would come to know the Lord. Either way, we come back to this theme, not that marriage is bad, but that the kingdom must be central. Here in 29 through 31, we have, brothers and sisters, this is what I mean. What he's basically saying is, don't live in the moment, right? You're not defined by what you're doing in life. You're defined by what you do about the world that is fading away. So I am a pastor. You may be a cop. You may be a stay-at-home mom. You may be, I don't know what you are. But we must live not in the moment. That's a really popular catchphrase for a lot of people, but we shouldn't live in the moment. We should live in the kingdom, because we understand that the world is passing away. There's an urgency to us that we understand that everything in this world is temporary, including, as we see here at the bottom, marriage. Marriage for for us is not eternal. Marriage is a temporary thing. Not temporary in the sense of I can annul it whenever I want. Temporary in the sense that we are bound in marriage until death. At death, we have fulfilled the marriage covenant. And as we see in 39 through 40, you are bound as long as your spouse is living. So Paul is, again, he's not saying that marriage is a bad thing or that rejoicing or weeping are necessarily bad. What he's saying is keep a kingdom mindset. Keep your eyes on what Christ has us here to do. Now here in 32, we have, I want you to be without concerns, an unmarried man. This is that whole split attention thing. Down in 35, he says, I am saying this for your own benefit, not to put a restraint on you, but to promote what is proper, so that you may devote yourself to the Lord without distraction. This is that remain where you are concept, is we don't look over the fence thinking, if only this would happen, I could better serve the Lord. It's not how that works. We better serve the Lord by better serving the Lord. And so we remain where we are and we say, this is where I am in life. I'm going to serve the Lord here. I'm not going to wait to serve the Lord until my life circumstance is different. Well, not me, I'm speaking hyperbolically here. I'm single, and if I was married, I could better serve the Lord. Not the case. And for the married although Paul is saying you certainly don't have any distractions if you're single, right? A single person, such as Paul, is able to do all kinds of things. And for the married person, it's, well, I have my spouse, so I can't do this. No. Wherever you are, serve the Lord. Set your eyes on the kingdom and take your circumstance with you. We're going to speed along here, 36 through 38. He talks about the tension there of if a man is acting improperly, which there's a lot of different interpretations for that. Basically, it's the idea going on here of he's not content and it's time to get married. They often had a longer engagement process than we did. So there's a little bit going on that perhaps we aren't accustomed to. But Paul says, do you need to fix it? Then go get married, right? Is your mind just so attached to this idea that you can't function until you get married? Then go get married. Take care of it. But are you content not being married? Then don't be married. Again, he's coming back to this idea of set your eyes on the kingdom. Make Christ the main thing. Don't make everything else the main thing. And then he has, as we mentioned earlier, this final clause here, verses 39 and 40, a man is bound as long as his husband, or a wife is bound as, no glasses, right? A wife is bound as long as her husband is living. So we have a living marriage covenant, which is that when you're married, that covenant is established and is fulfilled in death. So marriage is ultimately looking ahead and towards the end, which is our deaths. That is when we have turned in the completion of our covenant. We have fulfilled our covenant obligation to our spouse. And then he says, if Paul says, if her husband dies, she's free to marry whoever she wants. So at death, the covenant is fulfilled and she has fulfilled her obligation to the covenant, and she can get married only in the Lord. And I think that's a key phrase, because notice what he says next. If she's happier remaining as she is, stay that way. Because I want you to seek the Lord first. The Lord must be primary in everything. And then Paul says, I know that we haven't really addressed this a whole lot. We have in the past, but he has the whole, this is my opinion, this is not from the Lord. Paul qualifies his opinion, though, by saying, I think that I also have the same Spirit of God. So he's saying, the Spirit of the Lord works in me. I am an apostle. And even though this isn't a Isaiah-style revelation, you should probably listen. So the main gist was this, that we would remember that this world is not the priority. The kingdom is the priority. I know that there's a popular saying that you can be so kingdom-minded that you're of no earthly value. I really don't like that phrase, because the earthly value has no value. It is where we find our value is the kingdom. So I want to encourage you to be kingdom-minded, and to interpret how you work in this world through a kingdom mindset, so that you could serve the Lord without hindrance. Thank you for joining. We're going to be looking at food sacrifice to idols next week. I'm really excited. This has a lot to do with cultural appropriation and with asking ethical questions. So we're going to start getting into some really fun passages. This was our final marriage passage for a while. And so now we're going to jump into some new topics. So hope to see you next week. Thanks for joining me, and I hope you have a great week.